Welcome back, Nazreen. President Clinton eventually intervened with the Musharraf administration to get Nawaz Sharif out of prison and into exile. How did that intervention take place?
Very quietly and at a very high level. I was actually not involved in that, except to the extent that we certainly did not want to see another Pakistani leader hanged. And the person that was at the staff level, Bruce Rydell, had some dealings with the various parties involved, and I'm glad that indeed General Musharraf said, he sent the signal. He said, "I'm a compassionate man." I remember him saying that, and so I think that it was pushing on something of an open door.
Okay, so that's good. So
Musharraf
invited, in a sense.
I certainly read it that way.
Okay, and then you got hold of the
I think
Saudis?
he also said he was not a vindictive man.
Yeah, he said that. And so what? It was a joint Saudi-U.S. initiative?
I think so.
And the Saudis actually carried the message, but with the backing of Clinton.
I mean, the Saudis are very good at carrying messages that you never hear about, and you never know who delivers them.
That's true.
So I mean,
but they have clout.
They do. And indeed, they have more clout than I think virtually any other country.
Why do you think that's the case?
Well, when I say virtually any other country, and they operate so much behind the scenes. I know that currently Ambassador Holbrooke is in discussions with the Saudis about what is happening with respect to Afghanistan and Pakistan. And they have a role here to play. They've had a role behind the scenes for a long time. The whole issue of Wahhabism and the export of that, and the madrasas and the funding and the assistance. So I think that it's very important for the Saudis to be involved. And I know that, they were one of the three countries that did recognize the Taliban as the official
Pakistan,
government.
Saudi Arabia,
but they soured very quickly because of the Taliban's behavior toward them.
Osama bin Laden.
Exactly. And so I think that, and recently in discussions about Afghanistan and the ability to start opening up talks with elements of the Taliban, I think the Saudis can play a valuable role there, and indeed there have already been some meetings taken.
No, we'll come to the question of Afghanistan, but first India. Yeah. President Clinton goes to India in 2000. That's a turning point in U.S.-India relations.
Yes.
And in a strange way, Kargil may have played a role in that, because in Kargil, your administration did not take a pro-Pakistan position. That's right. And the Indians must have been quite surprised that you were taking an objective position.
Yeah, they were enormously surprised. And indeed, during those discussions at the Blair House with Prime Minister Sharif, an effort was made to keep the Indians informed of how we were progressing. We tried to do this in a very transparent way. And I remember President Clinton called Prime Minister Sharif, and after he gave him basically a briefing of where we stood and how he was trying to help resolve this immediate crisis, Prime Minister Sharif said, "And what do you want me to do?" And President Clinton said, "Nothing. I'm just informing you." That was a very important point.
Prime Minister Vajpayee said that.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was a very important point, and I think that in some ways the turning point in our relationship can also be traced, as you just said, to Kargil, because the Indians saw that we would try to look at this in a way that you have the facts on the table and you'll call it as you see it, which we did.
That's right.
There was no desire to gang up on Pakistan if Pakistan was not responsible.
But there was no desire to put pressure on India, and you took a position that was, the internationally correct position to take. So there was no pro-Pakistan tilt. And I think that's what the Indians were impressed with and surprised.
Yeah.
And then I think the 5 days in India.
5 days in India were...
You were on that trip.
I was on that trip, and I think it was one of the most, one of the high points of the Clinton presidency in terms of, we had so much baggage in our relationship with India going back to the Cold War, their Soviet Union connection, the divide that we had during the Cold War, that came to an end at the end of, at the beginning of the 1990s. India started to opening up its economy, getting away from that sort of Nehruvian socialism. opening up its economy to the international marketplace. Our businesses saw opportunities there. Their economy started to take off under then Finance Minister Manmohan Singh. And so that opened up the possibility of having a relationship with India that we had never had. We were estranged democracies, to use the title of a book by Dennis Cox. We needed to be engaged democracies. We do have a strong tie with India because of our democratic values and our history with democracy. And President Clinton wanted to pursue that. Couldn't do it at the beginning of his second term because of those nuclear tests. That kind of put us in a reverse mode as opposed to forward mode. But then he had that trip and it went very well.
And recently you've written an article on the critical nature of the US-India relationship, in which you've advocated a very strong gung-ho approach towards India. People in Pakistan obviously say, well, what's happened to Mr. Inderfirth? He used to be pro-Pakistan, he's now becoming pro-India. What exactly are you saying strategically?
I am pro both countries because I think both countries are important for their own reasons to the United States. And I'm actually very pro composite dialogue in India and Pakistan working together to address their problems. And that's why I hope the whole aftermath of Mumbai can be solved.
Where do you see the India-US relationship? Is it at China's expense, or do you think that's an independent relationship?
That's an independent relationship. I don't see the U.S. and India having any kind of collusion to have a hedge against a rising China. I tried to speak out against that. I think that we need to pursue our relations with China, again, on their own merits, and we've got an enormous economic investment in that relationship and a growing economic investment with India. And I think that these are, there was a report by the National Intelligence Council here, the NIC as they call it, mapping the global future, the 2020 project. What's the world going to look like in 2020? It said something rather remarkable, that as the rise of Germany defined the 19th century and the rise of the United States defined the 20th century, the rise of China and India for the 21st century will transform the geopolitical landscape. In other words, this is going to be a multipolar world, and everyone looking at that world as it's evolving sees China and India playing a major role. And I think that that was part of President Clinton's reasons for wanting to move ahead with this relationship. And most importantly, when the administration changed from Democratic to Republican, President Bush picked up on that and accelerated the process, including with that civilian nuclear deal. So, and the new administration is pursuing this too. So that's a strong relationship, but we also believe that we can have a strong relationship with Pakistan, dealing with all the things that we're dealing with.
But precisely my point. I mean, the thing is that this sum-zero game between India and Pakistan then is no longer tenable.
It's a thing of the past, or it should be a thing of the past.
And India, what sort of concessions should India make, and what sort of concessions should Pakistan make to get moving?
Trust each other. But learn to trust each other.
Without conflict resolution, how can you have trust?
There's a common threat that we face. Pakistan is facing it every day. SWAT was an example of what's taking place in the tribal areas. We face that threat, the spillover from Afghanistan. India is also facing a similar threat, and Mumbai was the latest example. Somehow there needs to be a building up of trust and confidence, and the only way to do that is to work together. And indeed, we know that that has been possible.
But without conflict resolution?
Yeah, but on the issue to which we always return in some fashion, the issue of Kashmir, there is every reason to believe that those accounts of the back channel that was taking place between Pakistan and India at the request of President Musharraf and Prime Minister Vajpayee and then Manmohan Singh, and with the back channel S.K. Lamba of India and Tariq Aziz of Pakistan, that progress was being made, a level of confidence was being generated. And then, of course, that had to be set aside when Pakistan and President Musharraf sacked the Chief Justice, and he got so engaged and embroiled in what was taking place on the democracy front in Pakistan. I'm hoping that the that it would be possible to get back to that back channel at some point.
Okay, let's take a break
Yeah.
and then we'll come back to this discussion. Nazreen, एक छोटी सी break.